Before we begin Unit 30, here is the answer to the Unit 29 question. The best answer is choice A.
Only a sustainable economy is capable of true prosperity. If governments reward environmentally sustainable practices, there will be a shift toward full cost pricing. In other words, the price of products will be higher because costs will reflect loss of natural capital. Unfortunately, most people believe our society is incapable of sacrificing economic gain for a sustainable way of life, even though we certainly have the technology to reach that goal. Unit 30. Will we elect for a sustainable future?
Politics is the system that people use to influence the policies and actions of their governments.
As such, the political process is instrumental in establishing future environmental policy.
If our species is to have a sustainable future, environmental policy must be enacted that can identify problems, formulate solutions, implement mitigation strategies, and monitor or adjust appropriate activities.
In a true democracy, every citizen's voice can be heard, and those who vote can make their government function for the good of all the people.
In a democratic society, power of elected officials is kept in check by routine elections and the guaranteed right of free speech.
Those of us who live in a democracy are fortunate, and we should never take this privilege for granted.
Democratic forms of government are fragile and can be easily dismantled by individuals seeking to take advantage of an ignorant or apathetic voter base.
For this reason alone, education is one of, if not the most important responsibilities of a democratic nation.
Although wonderful for ensuring freedom, democracy allows for special interest groups that can be very effective in influencing governmental decisions.
As their name implies, these groups often have a special agenda and are unconcerned with the best interest of society as a whole.
A perfect example of political interest hindering environmental progress is America's wavering response to the global climate crisis.
The solutions to human-induced climate change pose a threat to the powerful fossil fuel industry and require a tremendous economic sacrifice by society.
For these reasons, certain influential people and special interest groups have successfully taken advantage of the average person's lack of knowledge on the subject to undermine efforts to combat the problem.
Although recently reversed, this kind of political maneuvering had resulted in the United States pulling out of the 2016 Paris Climate Accord.
In the United States, developing and implementing policies is a complex process involving compromise and agreement between all three branches of government.
For this reason, creating and implementing environmental policy may never be easy or established without controversy.
However, should our youth develop a set of values based on economic sustainability as opposed to economic growth, businesses, individuals, and environmental organizations alike will be more apt to work together with the branches of our government to bring about necessary environmental change.
The field of environmental law involves a body of laws and treaties that define what is and is not acceptable practice.
When it comes to sustainability, the biggest problem with our legal system is that it's set up to defend people, not the environment.
Wouldn't it be interesting if the polar ice caps were able to sue the United States for willful negligence? That would be a unanimous decision in favor of the plaintiff.
As odd as the previous example may have been, it's obvious that some type of legal protection for components of our environment must be provided.
Fortunately, there are currently many grassroots environmental organizations that are attempting to bring about such change.
If a person lacks an education in nutrition and is offered a choice between healthy food and an assortment of treats, which would they select?
They would most likely choose the treats, for the simple reason that the junk food tastes better.
However, if the person understood the consequences of eating unhealthy food, would they still make that choice?
A person should have the right to choose, but shouldn't everyone also be entitled to an education in nutrition so that they can make an informed decision?
How would you feel about parents that fail to teach their children about proper nutrition, or even worse, intentionally misinform them in order to cause serious health issues?
Unimaginable, right?
Now consider those politicians and public leaders that continue to spread propaganda to intentionally mislead their supporters.
How are voters that make choices based on misinformation or lack thereof any different than the person selecting the junk food?
This really makes you think, doesn't it?
For several years, our country's finest colleges and universities have been transitioning to curricula that emphasize environmental awareness in order to combat this war on factual information.
However, an education introducing the fundamentals of environmental science should be provided for all citizens, not just those attending institutions of higher learning.
Hopefully it will not be long before secondary schools begin a sincere dedication to curricula enhanced with environmental education, and this will result in a well-informed and better educated voter base.
After all, we the people select government officials, and shouldn't every citizen be entitled to understand what choices are really best for them?
When discussing politics and the legal system, we must consider the fact that many environmental problems are global issues.
A treaty is a formally concluded and ratified agreement between countries.
The United Nations negotiates and monitors these agreements.
Unfortunately, most international treaties lack criteria for evaluating their effectiveness, and it's often up to the individual countries to follow through on their promises.
Hopefully, future world leaders will realize the need for improved procedures, funding, monitoring, and enforcement of agreed-upon terms, because well-implemented treaties will result in greater environmental security for all countries.
Global leaders have been able to cooperate on issues involving national security. They will need to do the same if we are to achieve a truly sustainable world.
Global cooperation between countries is certainly important. However, it's a country's people and their beliefs that shape the government that represents them.
Environmental security, like national security, starts with fundamental ideas that originate from individuals.
People in free nations shape governments to be what they want them to be.
Even in a democratic nation, citizens sometimes feel that the government is letting them down, or that it cannot be trusted to do what's right.
However, we the people are the ones that elect our politicians, so we should look no further than a mirror to find someone to blame if things are not progressing as well as they should.
Will we elect for a sustainable future? One thing's for sure. If teachers infuse environmental concepts into our elementary and secondary educational programs, we'll certainly stand a better chance. Here is the question for Unit 30.
A major flaw in our legal system when it comes to the environment is that
Choice A. It permits many grassroots environmental organizations to advocate for the rights of our environmental assets.
Choice B. It's set up to defend people, not the environment.
Choice C. It prevents politicians and public leaders from spreading propaganda to intentionally mislead their supporters.
Or Choice D. It has been preventing our country's finest colleges and universities from transitioning to curricula that emphasize environmental awareness in order to combat the war on factual information.
The answer and explanation are provided at the beginning of Unit 31.